You are tuned to the Nighttime Podcast, focused on the fringe of Canada.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to my coverage of the Nova Scotia shooting and arson rampages. For tonight's episode, I'm going to share audio that was recorded during a live stream on the Nighttime Podcast YouTube channel on the evening of Sunday, May 9th. Investigative journalist Paul Palango and I reconnected to discuss current developments in the case, as well as hear comments and answer questions phoned in by the viewing audience. So I don't think there's any need to really set this up much more, because I think you know probably what you're in for. So let's get to it. Tonight, in this episode, Paul Palango and I will again be discussing the Nova Scotia shooting and arson rampage. Paul Palango, I'm disappointed that the viewing audience wasn't able to see your computer problems there. I got to see a different side of you than I expected to ever see.
Yes, I am totally inept, as the RCMP says.
I guess the RCMP was right the whole time. And
yeah, they got me. They got my number. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm inept, stupid, lazy, crazy, conspiracy theorist. And I don't know how to start up my own computer.
And it all manifested itself in you joining a Google Meet invite. But that was something else. So how have you been? You've had a busy week. You have a new article out that again has got people talking. Yeah,
it's been an interesting week because every day, everybody's day is pretty well the same as it has been for the last year and a bit. My day is the same every day because every day I write for 3 or 4 hours or longer doing book stuff, and then I'm doing magazine stuff, and then I'll get up tonight on Sunday nights. Who doesn't want to spend their late Sunday nights with Jordan? We're here doing that. The article, the article this week, for those who don't know how it came about, first arose with Seamus Gorman and Little Gray Cells, who came across, someone told them about this RCMP guy, John Robin, going to visit people, and he had a card that attributed or stated that he was part of the Nova Scotia Mass Casualty Commission. Kudos to Seamus. The problem is that when you get something like that, you have to do something with it. You can't just talk about it and leave it out in the ether, because what matters at the end of the day is the written word. Things have to be written down, and someone's got to write it. So I took the story, and I knew a lot about that for the last year. Robin, as I said last week, I'm sort of writing it around page 300 here, and I have John Robin well ensconced at page 52. So I've been on him for a while.
Yeah. Just for people listening, just to give the right context, the Robin, the RCMP officer's card, what exactly does it say on his business card that links him to the Mass Casualty Commission?
Well, it's an odd sort of wording on the thing. It says John Robin, Chief Superintendent John Robin, contract and Indigenous policing, and then next line, Nova Scotia Mass Casualty Commission, and on the back he has a bunch of phone numbers in Ottawa and Nova Scotia, and the part that John Robin left out on his card, well, there's a couple of parts he left out on his card. One was that, according to my sources, he was the head of covert operations in Ottawa, which put him in charge of all confidential and other informants to the RCMP and all their covert ops, which is sort of not the kind of guy you want knocking on your door on a Saturday afternoon as they did with Sharon and Tim McClellan. Mm-hmm. Secondly, he was accompanied by a woman he described or vaguely described as being a police officer in the HRM. Well, actually, and for those who are outside of Halifax, that's the Halifax Regional Municipality. Well, actually, there are two police forces in the Halifax Regional Municipality. This odd sort of situation where you have the Halifax Regional Police policing the urban area and the RCMP policing the rural areas in the county. Well, the head of the RCMP in Halifax region is Janice Gray, Chief Superintendent Janice Gray, who happens to be John Robin's wife. So she was there with him. We know this because Sharon McClellan, Tim McClellan looked at, after I did the story, they went and looked at Facebook pages, and thank God for Facebook and that people are so stupid for putting everything in their life on it, because it's a reporter's best friend.
Hell yeah.
And it's amazing because I'm sure John Robin and Janice Gray are saying, that's not right. He shouldn't be. That's private. No, it's not private. And many of the good leads that I and others have found in this story have come from Facebook, because people just blah, 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 blah. Can't wait to put their pictures on Facebook. And I say, thank you very much. Continue to do it. Make me your friend, because when I need it for a story, that's where I go.
It works. As a podcaster as well, it's forever comes in handy. I'll be reading an old news article. Someone I want to reach is mentioned in it. I put their name in there, and it's crazy who you can connect with, but nothing's private on there.
Well, without getting too far off the path, I mean, the beauty of Facebook was that, and I talked about this a bit last week, after the massacres last year, 70 Mounties took off for stress leave, 70 of them. But I already knew a lot had taken off until Elizabeth McMillan had done that story about the 70 taking off. But I already knew about it because of Facebook, because I knew some of the officers' names, and I could see the hims and hers of the RCMP lounging around their pools, doing all this stuff, chatting about how wonderful the summer is. And I thank them very much for doing that. And I ask them to continue doing that.
Well, let's get back to Robin. So how he has the business card with the mass, connecting him to the Mass Casualty Commission. First of all, I know the answer to this, but I just want to hear you say it. What is the problem with an RCMP officer with a background in covert operations being involved in this mass casualty report? What problem do you see in that?
There are a million problems, but number one problem is, just on the surface, this is supposedly an independent commission looking into what happened. And what happened was, we all know, just without even doing any investigation, 9 people were killed on Sunday, April 19th, by a killer, Gabriel Wortman, who got away from the RCMP, and they did nothing to block the roads, put out an alert, do any of the things you would think a police force would do to apprehend a killer. So right there, that's a problem. Number two, I've gone through, as I continue to go through my research and interview people, it's quite clear to me, quite clear to a number of my sources and me, that somebody close to Wortman, if not Wortman himself, had some sort of special relationship with the police. And here's where my distant cousins in journalism go, here's a conspiracy theory coming. No, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's based on the observable facts and interviews, what journalists normally do. The problem with Robin, that when the RCMP then addressed this issue the other day, they said, well, Robin is really, I forget the word they used, but effectively, he's the liaison between the RCMP and the commission. And he's going to act as the liaison. Well, excuse me. He was the head of covert operations in Ottawa. Why is he in Halifax being the liaison? And what's he going to do as the liaison? Is the commission going to ask for, we want to see this, this, and that? And he's going to say, oh, no, you can't see that. That's what I was doing, or anything else. But I mean, if you just narrow in on him, if he had something to hide, he's exactly the wrong guy you want there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I find it, if they were going to have a liaison, why wouldn't it be some kind of like, I don't know, like a public relations sort of, or an administrative person to have like a covert operations person? It just seems like that wouldn't be the right choice. And then,
Well, it screams in like, it screams 7 letters in capital letters, like 10 feet high. Cover up. If you don't want to cover up, you don't want it to appear to be a cover up, put neutral people in there and let the chips fall where they may. But they're not doing that.
mm-hmm,
And my distant cousins in the media don't seem to understand that. They're not going after this with any sort of tenacity saying, whoa, what's going on here? In the old days, like 20, 30 years ago, nobody would get away with this because journalists would hold them accountable.
mm-hmm,
The opposition parties would hold the government accountable. People would be on their hind legs screaming and yelling, like, you can't let this happen. Get rid of that man. Fire him. Burn the house down. But no, we're just sitting here like sheep going, well, not me, not you, not some of the people out there who are telling Seamus Gorman these things. But most of them are sitting there going, well, we want to know more about Gabriel Wortman and did he set another fire somewhere? Who the hell cares? We know what happened with him. The issue is what happened with the RCMP.
yeah. So this article comes out in Frank where you break down the story with the card connecting RCMP officer Robin to the commission. I was surprised to see that. But did the RCMP respond to you, or just or respond to it, or just the Mass Casualty Commission?
No, the RCMP. Well, the RCMP didn't respond to us. We wrote a letter to the RCMP, and it's quite funny working with Frank because everybody hates Frank, but they're the only ones who are actually doing what journalists should do. Like, no fear, no favor, just tell the story. And the RCMP didn't respond. But when Chris Lambie of the Chronicle Herald got involved and followed up on it, right away they responded to him. So, we know we're down the pecking order. We're not going to get we're not going to get any respect from them. But we'll keep doing stories. And, when other people start picking them up, then it's at their peril.
Mm-hmm. And then the Mass Casualty Commission, they issued a response as well. Was it just today or yesterday they did this?
I think it was the other day. I really don't pay attention to it. What did it say? May 7th.
It was after Frank it was after Frank's article came up.
Oh, well, they waited a couple of days. I mean, the Frank article came out on Monday or Tuesday. So on Friday, they finally figured it out. And I don't know if you want me to read it.
Yeah, read it. Because it's interesting.
Response to RCMP business card. The Mass Casualty Commission is aware that an RCMP business card is providing confusion about whether there is a relationship between the RCMP and the Commission. We want to provide clarity. The Mass Casualty Commission is an independent inquiry that has the responsibility, among other things, of reviewing the RCMP's activities with respect to the mass casualty events and their aftermath. The Commission does not employ anyone from the RCMP. We do not take any instructions from the RCMP. We are asking the RCMP to remove the card to avoid further confusion. We are reaching out to individuals and groups as well as the community to make them aware of our concern about the incorrect perception about our independence and to address any questions. Emily Hill, Commission Counsel. Yay.
So what do you make of that?
Well, if they are the independent body they say they are, and they're going to do the job they say they're going to do, that's fine. That's great. But I have no faith in them already because you already have, we talked about this before. We have commissioners who accepted doing a review with bringing out no new evidence. Mr. Justice McDonald and former Fredericton Police Chief and RCMP employee Leanne Fitch, because she did work with the RCMP as a management consultant just prior to this. So how can I have faith in this commission when you've got two commissioners who are already polluted before they even got into it?
Yeah.
So it's nice that they're going out there protesting this RCMP this card. The funny thing is, when you read that thing, they're protesting the card. They're not protesting the fact that John Robin is the liaison guy. That's the issue. The card is one thing, but the very fact that you have this guy sitting at the intersection between the RCMP and the commission is discreditable.
Yeah, no, and even to try to play devil's advocate in this, say Robin was the liaison between the RCMP and the Mass Casualty Commission, and he decided to update his business card to reflect that. You'd think it'd be more clear. It's almost like if my job was to deliver Pepsi to Sobeys, and then on my business card I have Sobeys. I'm with Sobeys.
Well, Jordan, I've seen over my lifetime, I've probably seen 1,000 RCMP cards, and every one I see is specific about the position the person is in and what they're doing. That card had no specificity, so it tells me, geez, look at this guy was in covert operations, running covert operations. Is this what they do? Make up a business card so they can sort of fob off something that people look at it and not realize what it is. I took one look at it after I got it from Sharon, and I'm going, that doesn't look right to me right off the face.
And it's definitely a legitimate card because you're getting these responses are coming out. Like, my first thought would have been it was someone in Photoshop or something, but they wouldn't be responding in the way they are.
No, it was a real fake card, I think.
Either way, it adds to the pile of things that make me uneasy about every aspect of this story and the investigation into it. And it's just another kind of, for people who say Paul Palango is a conspiracy theorist nut, if you're a conspiracy theorist, then if you're not a conspiracy theorist, then that's a pretty big typo. Or if that sentence is right or wrong. But you get what I mean.
Yeah, I think, if I was on a lot of people's lists, if I was like, on the RCMP list, I'm 10 out of 10 as a conspiracy theorist. On Little Gray Cells, of all places, they have me working with, some of them have me working with the police, which will come in as the entire shock to the RCMP, that, we're in bed together, get away from me, don't touch me.
If there ever was a cover-up, though, having you and Frank and the RCMP all in the office together.
Yeah, we're all together on this. And as I said, if I was a 9.9 on the RCMP list, or a 10, and sort of an 8.9 on some of these other sort of Little Gray Cells or whatever, I think that story should get me knocked down to about a 7.
Yeah.
I got a little bit of reality there, a little bit of cred, so.
Before we move on to listener and viewer questions, anything else going on you want to talk about? Are you working on something now?
Well, the big thing I'm working on is working on the book, working on the documentary. And I'm really excited about the documentary because I know that some of the families are like, oh, we don't want to deal with them. They're making money off of us and stuff like that. Well, it's not quite that way. We don't want these Americans or these English people coming in because, they don't know us. They don't know Nova Scotia. No, they know the story. And, I'm pretty excited about their commitment to it. It looks like it may be going forward because we've done a lot of preliminary work. And again, the families have said, well, you haven't contacted me and you haven't contacted this and you haven't got any clearances. Well, there's 22 murdered victims here. There's a lot of people to deal with. We can't deal with all of them at this stage. But we are going to deal with it. And again, I look at the work they're doing. You look at Victim 4, which is on Netflix right now. This is part of the same team doing this. And in Victim 4, there's been stories in recent weeks about the impact that has had in Boston on the way the police operate and how politicians have basically, and government has basically said they have to make changes. They have to do this. They have to do that. And it's all a direct result of a very highly professional story and a commitment by the producers to turn out a quality documentary. It's not going to be one of those, hopefully, I don't know what's going to be like in the end, but I hope it's not going to be one of those namby-pamby Canadian documentaries that basically says on the one hand, on the other, and at the end say, you go figure it out, which one side is true. That's not, I don't like that style of journalism. I think it's had its time. It's ineffective. And that's why I lean towards people who are going to help tell the story for the benefit of the families. Because at the end of the day, when we get this done, if it goes the way I think it's going to go, well, the RCMP, the government, and everyone is going to be called into question. And it's not a matter of, the big issue is people say, well, the government's just, I had a letter the other day, the government is just going to pay the families off and they'll go away. Well, that is possible. That happens. As soon as they get paid off, they lose interest. Well, I'm not going to lose interest because I'm not here for a payoff. I'm here to look in, to defend the people who died, to find out why they died, and to get them justice. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, the way I see it is you made enemies with the RCMP and had problems with them well before this, and I feel like it's like your enemy is really starting some shit, and of course you're gonna pop up. I feel like you were like you're like the chosen one to like come into this and show the side of them that isn't being showed by the mainstream. And again,
first of all, Jordan, I'm not the enemy of the RCMP. I'm a knowledgeable critic of the RCMP.
It's a nice.
I was talking to today, communicating with some former senior RCM people. They see me as a friend of the RCMP.
Yeah. How about I say this? You're the enemy of some elements of the RCMP.
Yeah, I'm the enemy of incompetence, dysfunction, an unsustainable force, a cadre of leaders that many of whom shouldn't be there. I mean, that's the other part of the story that I did this week that I was waiting to do for, since May, and I couldn't really find the hook in print to do it. And once again, Little Gray Cells. Seamus Gordon's been talking about this for a number of months, but until you put it on paper, nobody understands what it is. And I have a little more knowledge than he does. So I put it on paper. So what you have in Nova Scotia that I've been waiting to outline for a long time is a cadre of couples, which is really, really odd and disturbing. Husband and wife teams who were gradually moved into Nova Scotia at senior positions beginning around, the first one was Bergerman, who came in 2016. But after that, a whole bunch of them, including Chris Leatherdahl, all come from BC with experience in BC. All have, they didn't have glorious careers there. It was sort of like the RCMP. You never know what anyone really does. But they all got moved out. A lot of them are women who were brought in with their husbands. They came down here and they're all hiding. Like if you look at this from the beginning, we're a year and a half down the road, or almost not a year and a half, a year and a month down the road. We still don't know who did what. And I go out of my way to try to put names on the record of these officers, people nobody's ever heard of, who are in charge of policing in Nova Scotia. The people in Nova Scotia had no say over them being here, selecting them, holding them accountable. We have no say whatsoever. They're like an invading police force. And you have to look at it that way. Like even as Premier McNeil and Mark Fury were talking about setting up an inquiry, they're saying, well, we really don't have responsibility for them. That's a federal government thing. How the hell can we have a police force that we can't hold accountable? It sort of defies democratic logic. But they're in here, they come in here, they all have these cushy jobs. But the worst thing is They're all protecting each other. And that's the point of the story I did. That you have all of these couples who hold key positions, almost all the key positions in Nova Scotia, and there's no way they're going to rat each other out. That, to me, that means get rid of them all and start over.
Let's move on to the we have a lot of people wanting to ask questions, but before we open the lines and get some calls coming in, I want to play you a voicemail that someone sent me, I think yesterday, with a question for you that ties into, like, you've talked a lot about uncovering connections with these shady people and noticing these patterns and trends within people who, you know, if half of what you suspect is happening, you probably watch your back a bit. That's what this voice memo is all about. So listen to this.
Hi, Jordan. Hi, Paul. My name is Tanya, and I live in Nova Scotia. And I just had a quick question, or I guess comment for Paul. Paul, I'm just curious, since you're kind of known for digging up dirt on the RCMP and tackling all of these huge controversial stories, do you ever worry that your life may be in danger, or are you always watching your back, that sort of thing? I imagine you've thought about that. I'm not worried for you at all, but I'm just, gosh, if anything were to ever happen to you unexpectedly, it would just leave all of this up in the air. So just kind of wanted to pick Paul's brain about that. Thank you both for everything you have done and continue to do. We really appreciate it and don't know what we would do without you. Thanks so much. Take care.
I never thought of, if something happened to you unexpectedly in the middle of all this, what people would say. What are your thoughts on what she had to ask?
One of the things I've learned, I've been a freelancer for, after I left the Globe and Mail, sort of all through the 90s. And I've never really said this before publicly, but I'll answer your question, Tanya, this way. I decided at a certain point in the early 90s that I was going to take on difficult stories. And my big concern was I had a young family, a wife and a young family. How am I going to do that? So I took out a huge insurance policy. And I said, okay, now I've got this insurance. So if I get killed, my family's taken care of. And I went on. I did research on doing a story on the Church of Scientology back in the 90s after they had sued Time magazine for $457 million. I had a great book idea, nobody to publish it because Time magazine was being sued for $457 million. But I'd uncovered facts that could help Time. And Time eventually won its suit and got out from under that. Then I got involved in another, among the stories I did, but I got involved in another story in Hamilton where people sued me for $11 million. And then I figured, for asking questions about them, I hadn't even written anything. And then I figured they would try to hire a hitman to kill me. And I figured out who the hitman would be. And I met these mafia guys, and it's a long, involved story. And then I sued the people back, and then it was a 10-year fight. And my garbage would be getting stolen, and I'd have surveillance and stuff like that. At the end of the day, I beat them down, and I got a really nice house now. So I have a comfortable life. I live well. I don't need to do this. I do it because it's the right thing to do. So now I'm dealing with the Mounties. I've been dealing with the Mounties for 30 years. I have seen virtually every one of their dirty tricks. They don't fight fair. They fight behind the scenes. They manipulate public opinion. They'll lobby broadcasters not to have me on. I'm not really afraid of the Mounties. People say, well, you better watch out. They'll hire some dirty guys to kill you and stuff like that. Well, other people have tried to hire people to kill me. I even met the hitman back in Hamilton. You can look him up, Ken Murdoch, Murdock, is it? Yeah. who killed John Papillia and Carmen Barrilero. I spent 4 days in prison with them.
Wow.
In the Kingston Penitentiary interviewing. We did not have sex. But again, the book never got published because Canadian publishers were afraid of it. Like, oh, this is too dangerous a story. I thought it was a great story. So am I afraid of the Mounties? My wife is a little nervous at times about some of the things I do. You know, like the time I was on Rick Howe and I asked the Hells Angels to give me a call. And I came out to the kitchen and she was listening on the delay and she goes, "Did I hear you just invited the Hells Angels to the house?" And I go, "Why not? I've dealt with bikers all my life. I've been in biker clubhouses. I'm not afraid of them and they're not going to hurt me. I'm not affecting their business. I'm not going after them. I'm not intruding on it. In fact, I should tell you the last thing on bikers. The funniest story was when I was back in Hamilton as a reporter in Hamilton back in the 70s, we got a report that Satan's Choice, which was a biker club in Ontario. Remember, the Satan's Choice had applied to run for mayor. And everybody in the newsroom was going, "Well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do?" And I said, "I'll go down and I'll go see him." "You're going to go to their club?" I go, "Sure." I went down, knocked on the door. I said, the guy answered the door. He says, "Who are you?" And I go, "I'm looking for Wench Kellett." That was the name of the guy. His first name was like James or something, but he went by the name Wench Kellett. And I said, so he answered the door. He said, "I'm looking for Wench Kellett." And he goes, "Who are you?" I said, "From the Hamilton Spectator." He turns around and yells into the club, "Even the fucking Spectator has this place bugged." And it went into a long, long story. And the next year, Wench Kellett was in a fight with the police and got shot and killed.
Wow. We got a caller here, Paul. Hey, caller, can you hear us?
Yes.
Why don't you tell us maybe your name or where you're from, if you're comfortable with that, then you can give us your comments.
I'm the cat guy from Onslow.
The cat guy from Onslow?
Yeah, Paul will know what I'm talking about.
All right, cool. Well, what do you got to say?
I got a question about Mr. Robin, John Robin.
Okay, what's the question?
Okay, so the first one is about timeline, and but it appears at 10:40 p.m. on Saturday night that the Wortman Cottage was lit on fire or fully engulfed in flames around 10:40. Meanwhile, the Zal's property seemed to be catching on fire around 10:56 that evening, which is about 10 minutes after the official RCMP narrative of Wortman getting out of Dodge, a Fortipic out through the Blueberry Field route. My question is, would Wortman, Ilya, so I'm not just saying that Wortman was a individual player in this, but if Wortman and whomever he may have been working with, would Paul think that they may have evacuated past 10:45 and probably beyond 10:58 p.m. when the witness was sitting at Brown's Loop? The second question is with in regards to John Robin and his calling card. If I look it up here right fast, in French it says response to the commission of the Nova Scotia mass casualty, but in English it says Nova Scotia Mass Casualty Commission. Is that not just a conflict of interest? Those are two separate entities, one being an official federal police force versus, I don't want to say grassroots, but a more provincial organization investigating impartially what happened last April. Either way, in my opinion, it's highly suspect, and I would like if Paul could comment on both those issues. It'd be greatly appreciated.
Will do. You can listen off air. Thanks for your call, cat guy.
I'll take the second one first. The whole evacuation thing, like what time he left. The RCMP has changed the story so many times as to be alarming. You think if there was editorial writers in Nova Scotia who are awake and sentient, they'd be saying, why are you changing this so many times? Don't you have digital communications that tell you when you did what you did?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to ask, why are they changing? Because there's some evolving story going on that they're trying to fit into their original narrative, which was kind of a shitty narrative because it looks like they whipped it up and they forgot that, Lisa Banfield can't be outside all night because she's got no clothes on and it's cold. So they keep changing. So what happened? I don't know. Getting down to the fires and the timing, I've seen all the various photos. I've seen them. To me, there's a real problem with the timeline. And I've tried to say this a number of times. I've written it a number of times. When I look at it, it doesn't fit. Like, who was killed first and who was killed last? And the whole thing about the Zolls, they're the only people on Portapique Beach Road who get killed. And there's, if you look at it, Wortman's Cottage was number 200. They were number 293. And then the Griffins, who are the only other people at that end of that road, are at 4 Ferris Lane, but that's effectively across the street from the Zolls at the bottom of Portapique Beach Road.
Mm-hmm.
All the fires there seem to start really late. That's undeniable. So what was going on down there? Meanwhile, on Orchard Beach Drive, 11 people are killed effectively on Orchard Beach Drive, including the 5 on Cobequid Court, which is at the bottom of Orchard Beach Drive. The police never go there. They're not there till the next day pretty well, except for to rescue the children at Macaulay's house. And in my mind, the more I've looked at this, I think there were 2 things going on. There's 2 different things going on at once. One is the RCMP is concentrating all its efforts on Portapique Beach Road, but it won't let the normal officers, the everyday officers go down there. And so you have to wonder what was going on down there that took all their attention. When did those fires start? How did those fires start? Did he use phosphorus grenades? We don't know any of that stuff. The funny thing about this, Jordan, just to interject, is that, early on, like I'm going through my notes, like last May, I guess about 3-4 weeks after the massacres, we're looking at the redacted documents, and one of the lines had, he had guns, ammunition, stuff blacked out. And 2 of my police sources says, oh, those are grenades. They're phosphorus grenades. So I wrote about it, and RCMP says nothing. Rest of media says, oh, Plango's a conspiracy theorist. Why would Wortman have grenades? You're a crazy guy living in Chester Basin. Then in November, December, they uncover that word along with a whole bunch of other stuff about Lisa and all these hiding in a tree hollow. And everybody writes about the tree hollow. Nobody writes about the goddamn grenades. Why did Wortman have 2 cases of grenades? What did he do with those grenades? If they're phosphorus grenades, you don't want a fire department fighting a phosphorus fire. Because up in Bass River, they're not equipped for that. Nobody's really equipped for it. You have to let it burn out. God, what happened? They let the fires burn out. They didn't try to put any of the fires out. Did they know that Wortman had phosphorus grenades? What was going on? So what was going on Portapique Beach Road that night? Your caller, the Catman, is absolutely right. There's something not right down there. And so this is up to our independent commission. If any of them are listening, the world wants to know, or as they say, it's like in Dirty Harry, the guy who got shot. I've got to know. So tell me what happened.
People are asking in the chat, and I don't know exactly myself. What are phosphorus grenades? They're in my mind, it's a grenade that instead of causing an explosion, causes a large fire. Is that right?
It causes a white hot, super hot fire. And if you put water on it, it's basic chemistry. It gets worse. So you can't put a phosphorus fire out with water.
You just got to let it burn unless you have a chemical.
It just goes off like a what do you call it? Halloween flare or something like that. It just shh and grows.
And that would explain why he was so successful with the arson side of these rampages, because it's like a lot of people try to burn down homes and do so unsuccessfully. Same with lighting cars on fire.
Well,
it seems like he didn't have much trouble at all.
You have a really good point there, and it's never been discussed. I was talking to a former fireman this week. He says if you look at the story that's attributed to Lisa Banfield, she says he splashed gasoline all around the place, and then, that and the warehouse, and then started them on fire. As the firefighter said, that is impossible. And he said to me, do you know why that's impossible, Paul? And I'll say, well, as a police reporter in Hamilton, back in the day when reporters actually used to go and do things, I had 3 different cases where people tried to put gasoline in the house and start the fire. And what happened to all 3 of them? They got blown out the front door, skin ripped off. One had his face ripped off. One guy got on Cannon Street, started a fire where he came out. Someone tried to tackle him and his skin came off in his hands.
Jesus. You
can't start a gasoline fire in a house by throwing gasoline around and then staying in the doorway and lighting a match, because you'll end up on the other side of the street. That's not how it works. So that's a fundamental flaw in their story that needs to be explained. We'll write about this in the future.
Yeah. All right. We got another caller here. Hey, caller. Can you hear me?
Hey, Jordan. It's Tony from Halifax calling.
Oh, Tony. I usually get your voice memos. Now I'm getting you live. This is great.
Yeah, I thought I'd give you a call tonight instead of leaving you a message.
Yeah, well, I'll thank you. First of all, your messages are always so thoughtful and eloquent. So thank you for sending them, and thank you even more so for calling. You got a comment or question for Paul and I?
Yeah, I have a question for Paul about the PROS database that the RCMP has. And I guess we know from the Truro police call logs that they were talking about Wortman and Banfield both being in that database. I was wondering if Paul could talk about why someone might be in that database. Like, what reason would someone be in the database for?
All right. Thank you, Tony. We'll answer that off air. Thanks for calling.
Thank you both. Bye-bye.
What is the PROS database?
Well, the PROS database, as I understand it, I may be wrong because I don't really deal with it, but I've been told about it, and I am focusing on it, and I have talked about it in the past. All files and data and information on case files are in the PROS database. Lisa Banfield was, I don't know why she would be in there, either as a victim or, allegations that, Wortman did this, that, or another thing, but the RCMP said those files were deleted. The big issue, Tony, with the PROS database is not that they're in it, but I've been told, that I've talked about this on the Rick Howe show, I've written about it on the Halifax Examiner in the past, or referred to it, but I want to do more on it, is that my sources say that from the outset, I've been told, the RCMP has been manipulating the PROS database. They have the ability to manipulate it, to make files disappear, to alter information. All of these things can be done. And this is, at the end of the day, a huge issue because, it's not the first time they've done this. If you look across Canada, there are cases like this all across Canada where they're deleting information, altering information. It was in the Glenixoon case in Halifax that Tim Bousquet wrote about. They do this with great regularity. And as a number of my RCMP sources have said, the PROS system has only been audited in the past by the government for privacy issues and things like that. No one has ever audited the PROS system to look at the integrity of the data. And that's what's required here. And that's one of the great fears that the RCMP is, cowering at 80 Garland Avenue and in Ottawa, because if we can get the public and the government to focus on manipulated data, that's a huge scandal. And I know it's true. The evidence is right there to be seen. Mm-hmm. They can't be allowed to change the evidence and make things disappear. Mm-hmm. They say, oh, nothing to see here. We're just cleaning up the database. I mean, remember, Jordan, we talked about this before back in November, the document on the moratorium on the destruction of evidence. They were doing it. They sent out a memo about it. And where were the editorial writers here? And, I guess they were out sailing, or, they're busy at their book club because, these are big stories in a normal world. Mm-hmm. Nova Scotia does not have a normal journalistic world.
I believe, yeah. And for people who don't know, I was just Googling it as you were talking. The PROS stands for Police Reporting and Occurrence System. And as far as why someone would be in there, just like you said, Paul, it could be a suspect, a victim, a witness. It seems like it's just a big digital database of the police reports that if you watch a TV show or a movie in the 80s, the police have a little notebook and they're taking little notes. Present day, it seems like those notebooks get uploaded to this database, so that way a police officer can search a address or a name and quickly get information. But the idea that someone would be modifying that information after the fact is that
not everyone can, as I understand, not everyone can modify it, but supervisors have a key, and there's ways to go in. If the file is open, they can go in. They could change the label on the file and put another name on top. So if investigators come in and they're looking for the file on Jordan Bonaparte, and they said, oh, there's one on Paul Palango, but that's really the Jordan Bonaparte one, but he's down far, far, far. So he'll still be there. And this is how the RCMP traditionally operates. I call it shades of truth. They'll say, well, it was there in the file, but they make everything difficult. Look how we've gone through for 13 months. When we started out 13 months ago, and I started doing this, people are going, okay, you're crazy, you're a wingnut, the conspiracy theorist thing. And I said, this is what's going to happen. And every single goddamn thing I said was going to happen has happened, and more has happened that's even surprised me, as I didn't realize that the force could be so duplicitous.
All right, we got another one here on that note. Hey, caller. How you doing?
Good, thanks. It's Brad calling from Halifax.
Hey, Brad. You got a question or comment for us?
Yeah, I called in last week after Paul you guys had wrapped up.
Yeah.
So, you'd asked me, what my first reaction was to waking up and learning there was a mass shooter somewhere in Nova Scotia. The whole thing, one of the first things that came to mind was that he was on drugs. And the reason I thought that is because I watched a documentary called Blitzed, The Nazis on Drugs. And the Nazis were known for using methamphetamine to advance their soldiers' movements and keep them up. And another effect on the brain from methamphetamine is it reduces your inhibitions to kill another human being. So that's why I think it's so important that a toxicology report is released to the public, or to the commission at the very least. So, Paul or the RCMP, where is the toxicology report? Have you seen one? Where's the coroner's report?
Yeah.
I found the psychological autopsy report that came out kind of ridiculous. It basically said that he was a grievance collector. It gave all the hallmarks of a mass shooter, being abused as a child and misogyny and things like that. So I also want to know what Paul's thoughts on that is. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. A lot there, but a lot of really good points. After we were on last week, after you left, he called in and had a lot of interesting stuff to say. But let's start with the toxicology. Do you have any reason to believe he was involved in actually abusing hard drugs?
Well, we've been told that he had all kinds of OxyContin, a bag of 15,000, and he was he was into all kinds of things. Was he a drug user? I haven't really heard that. He may have been using amphetamines. I mean, he drank a lot. But all the reports have been sort of suppressed.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know anything. They say, oh, well, we're saving it for the commission. Why? What's the point?
Robin has to look at it first.
Yeah, think about it. What's the point? He's dead. There's 22 people dead. Why all the secrecy? The second, what was the second part?
It was about the psychological autopsy.
And the psychological autopsy was bullshit. I mean, if you remember back when I was writing in the Halifax Examiner, I said, he's this, he's this, he's this, he's that. That's your psychological autopsy. Send the money to charity. That was all bull by the RCMP to basically create the monster story and perpetuate the monster story and deflect away from its own shortcomings and its considerable shortcomings.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the other point was the body itself was cremated. His parents weren't even given a chance to see him or do anything. The Lisa Banfield had him cremated right away. So God knows what they did. Did they look at his brain? Did they look, he'd be an interesting character to study. Did they do any of that? It doesn't seem to. Why did they want to get rid of him so quickly? And by hiding all the toxicology reports, everything perpetuates these kinds of conspiracy theories, real conspiracy theories, because there's this vacuum that can't be filled because we can't explain a lot of things.
My thought with the psychological autopsy, it was more about the timing, because it came out not long after this happened, and people just wanted to know who this guy was, what would drive him to do it. So the psychological autopsy, the grievance collector, when all that came out was when people were just hungry for information. Now we know so much more about his background and the different elements he was involved in. So if they just released that today, I don't think people would be as interested. I think it was just timing.
But Jordan, what they did with things like the psychological autopsy, the grievance collector, almost everything, like Lisa Banfield hiding in the tree stump or with the root system, every one of those things coincided with something that was damaging to the RCMP.
Mm-hmm.
And the damaging things to the RCMP were lost in that story. It was very sort of deliberate manipulation of information to create one image while suppressing another one. And in doing, in gathering the information for the book, I'm able to go over it in a chronological fashion and look at all of the things that happened in the time frame that they happened. You can clearly see this is what they do. They were using this strategically to cover up their own sort of the criticism about them.
I got another caller here though, so let's jump into it. Hey, caller.
Hi, thanks, Paul. Thanks, Jordan. I really appreciate these weekly sessions. I'm from Ontario, so it's really nice to get a glimpse of what's going on since there's such a lack of media coverage.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask Paul, since you've done so much coverage of the RCMP and policing in general, I was just wondering if you have seen a similar kind of response after a mass tragedy like this from other police forces in the past. And I was just, I think the obvious answer is no, but I just wonder how this compares to other mass tragedies such as, École Polytechnique and stuff like that.
Good question. Thanks. We'll answer that off air. Thanks, caller.
Thanks, Jordan and Paul.
You're right. There has never been a response like this per se. The École Polytechnique cases in the States, the police were really forthcoming early on, and we knew a lot about, Marc Lepine, we knew a lot about the shooter in Las Vegas. The only cases where you see problems involve the RCMP, basically. You look at the Mayerthorpe shooting, they don't fully disclose what's going on there. They spend 2 years hunting down Hennessy and Cheeseman, who are really incidental characters, to get their revenge and blame it on them, when the RCMP had all kinds of shortcomings there and basically lost 4 officers because of their not the incompetence of the officers, the incompetence of the supervisors, and putting them in that situation. You look at Moncton, and it took a long time to get really good answers out of Moncton too. This is the RCMP style of not, and why do they do this? A senior officer explained it to me, last year. He says, the one thing the RCMP fears more than anything else is to be held accountable. And nobody holds the RCMP accountable. If you look at the Nova Scotia legislature, most of those son of a bitches will be dressed in red serge. They will not hold them accountable. They're not independent. They're sycophants. That's not their job. They're like the Republican Party of Nova Scotia. They're not going to do anything to rock the boat. And, that's why the RCMP gets away. That's why we're in this situation. I've had calls from, I know Tim Houston was up visiting Leon Jodry. I've had calls from his office in the past. What have they done? Have they asked a question? Have they taken a position on this? No, it's all, let's wait for the inquiry. The inquiry will get it done. I can tell you right now, the inquiry is going to focus on domestic violence, and that's a dud. That's not the issue here.
Yeah, it's we could talk all night about this, and I'm just gauging by the chat and the amount of buzzes I'm having on my phone. We got to do this again next Sunday.
I'm here.
All right. Well, I know you got things you got to do tonight. You got to get more words on paper between your articles and your book. I don't know how you find the time. I find writing is so daunting. To write articles as well as a book at the same time, that must just fry your brain.
Yes and no, but I have one advantage that you don't have, Jordan.
No kids living with you?
Two advantages. Okay, 3 advantages.
What are they?
I'm old, so I've done this before. I know how to do it. And I have no kids. And I'm disciplined. I know what I'm trying to do. And, you can yell at me all the time and call me names. I don't hear it. I don't deal with it. In fact, there is an article coming out in Frank. I promoted it last week. It didn't come out. But
this is the person accusing you of having a mental illness.
Yeah, the guy. It's coming out. Andrew told me that he read it the other day. I think on Friday. He says, I got it all ready to go, and I read it again. He says, I like it even better the second time. He says, so that sort of tells you my mindset. I'm pretty, for a conspiracy theorist, I'm pretty sort of level-headed. I think.
Good.
I don't get sort of jacked about very much, but I did get jacked about getting John Robbins' card. So thank you, Seamus Corbin.
Yeah, that worked out. All right, Paul. Well, it's been fun. Not that it's been fun. It's been interesting and enlightening. And you've, again, between the questions and your comments, you're continuing to open mine and everyone listening and watching's eyes to what's going on here. So we'll do this again next Sunday.
Yep, I'm here.
All
See you
right,
later,
Paul.
Jordan.
Have
Thank
a
you
good
very
night.
much.
Thank you. And on behalf of everyone in the chat, thank you.
See you later. Bye-bye.
I want to thank you for again joining Paul Palango and I in another discussion surrounding the Nova Scotia shooting and arson rampages. But before we part here, I'm going to give some thanks. First, a huge thanks to Paul Palango for again spending his evening with me. As well, a big shout out to Monty Data for contributing the music to this episode. What you heard was a piece called Noir Tokyo. And lastly, but most importantly, a huge thank you to everyone who listens to Nighttime, as without your interest and your support, the show would be as pointless as it would be impossible. But with that said, keeping things alive here is and has always been an uphill battle. So if you want to put a band-aid on the skinned knee of the show, please consider subscribing to the premium feed. Not only does it keep the show alive, it'll give you more of each topic than you're going to find here on the free feed, as I'm adding exclusive content regularly. So for about the price of a cup of coffee, subscribe to the premium feed at patreon.com/nighttimepodcast. And with that said, let me thank the newest supporters of the show, Leah, Donna, and Andrew. Thank you for your generous support. And for anyone else who'd like to help the show but can't do it financially, you can give me a big hand by simply sharing the episodes on social media and letting your like-minded friends know about what we're doing here. If anyone out there has any story ideas or wants to give feedback on the show, reach me at nighttimepodcast.com/contact. You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and again, I'm live on YouTube quite often on the Nighttime Podcast YouTube channel. So that's it. Until next time, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let me know if you see anything weird.
The Nighttime Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Jordan Bonaparte. Copyright Jordan Bonaparte.